Welcome, everyone. My name's Maggie. I'm one of the reference librarians at the Troy Library. And I want to thank the Friends of the Library for supporting our program tonight. Tonight, I want to welcome Stephanie and Ken as they present Millennials and Money. This is the third seminar of the Bloom Finance's first series that we've put on this winter and spring. Now I'll hand these over to Stephanie and Ken. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you, Maggie. Wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Stephanie Bloom. I am the Director of Client Engagement at Bloom Advisors, and I'm joined by my father, Ken Bloom, who, although he is not a millennial, he has dealt with many of our issues, raising us and now helping us manage our money. So there was no one I thought would be better to invite than my dad to help with the discussion tonight.
No one who would be happier to attend than me.
So hopefully my dad doesn't embarrass me. But it is quite an intimate group tonight, which is really nice because we can really target things that are in your mind in addition to the presentation that we have. So if you have a second, it would be really wonderful if you could introduce yourself in the chat. Maybe just tell us where you're from, what brought you to the discussion tonight. And sort of what your financial situation is, you're saving for retirement, you're managing your debt, whatever it is, that we can try and target those things. So go ahead, you can put it in the chat, you can message it just to us or to the group, whatever you prefer, and I will skim through those just so I know who's in the room since we're virtual. So what are we going to talk about this evening? So we have a few topics to cover. So we'll start off by talking about who we are as millennials and why we're different. I feel like as a millennial myself, we like to be told that we're unique and special, and I will tell you why you are unique and special as a millennial. We'll talk about how to set yourself up for success, and then we'll talk about some situations that you are likely managing. So we'll talk about managing debt, we'll talk about saving your retirement, maybe college planning if that's on your mind, and we'll dive through that. So all right, let's go in. Thank you for the people who are starting to put their introductions in. All right, cool. So let's talk about who we are and why we're different. So just some textbook background knowledge for you. Millennials, we are the generation that was born between 81 and 96. We are currently ages 25 to 40. And we are, it says in here, formative events. We've lived through 9/11. To me, that was a big one. I think I put COVID on here too. I think our generation, 81 to 96 is a massive time frame because I was born in the 80s and I grew up before there was the internet. I remember we had one computer in the house. It was massive, right, Dad? And we used to play Oregon Trail from a floppy disk, right? That was what we had at home. My younger sister, we have a significant age gap between us. She, I feel like, had a Facebook account when she was in, 6th grade. She had a cell phone, Dad, at age 12, like age 13. She was quite young. Probably. And to me, there's a world of a difference, but that's who we are as millennials.
What I was going to say, yes. I do think that every generation goes through tremendous upheaval. So the baby boomers lived through a very, very turbulent time, civil unrest. You had the civil rights movement, Vietnam War, massive
rising
war, yeah. And then even like your papa's generation,
my grandfather,
the war, the recession, depression, not recession, depression.
Yeah.
So
I recently read, millennials, when thinking about our money, we like to talk about who we are as health, wealth, and self. We place such a value in our own health and personal improvement and all that sort of stuff that is slightly different than other generations that were more focused on providing for others. Not to say we're selfish, but we are very in tune to our own needs, unlike other generations. So let's keep on going. So a few other quick facts. We have different priorities than our parents' generation or our grandparents' generation. Maybe this resonates for you. We have delayed purchasing a home. Half of boomers were homeowners by age 34. Only 32% of millennials are homeowners. That speaks for itself. We don't feel the need to own as much as our parents do. We're okay just having access. So millennials are like, it's okay if I don't own a car. I have access to a car through Uber, through Lyft, through ride shares, right? I don't need to own a house. I can do long-term Airbnb rentals and float around. We've delayed marriage and parenthood. In the 70s, the median age of marriage was 23. In 2010, it was around 30. So I think that's only increased since. We care a lot more about ownership, about access over ownership. And there's this FOMO culture, which I'm sure you may feel as well with social media, where you see what other people are doing, whether it's the reality or not, but you see what they're doing and you think, I aspire for those things also, my friend just traveling in the national parks throughout the country. I want that too. So we have this push and pull, right? Where we want all these things. Then there's also the pullback of what's reality and what can you actually afford.
What I also think is interesting is that, so the baby boomers, of which I'm a part, their parents lived through a great deal, and we were talking about of upheaval, the Depression and World War II. And much of their lives were put on hold because of the war. And it was called a silent generation. The baby boomers as a generation benefited a great deal from their parents, from the silent generation, from their work ethic and savings. And so as the baby boomers matured as a group, I think they're certainly much more affluent than their parents' generation. And I think that influenced a great deal the way we raised our children and how they perceive things. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's
a difference.
Yeah.
So who are we now as millennials? We're the largest generation. We are the most diverse generation by far. Approximately 15% of US millennials are of foreign birth. And we are coming into a lot of money. So there is estimated to be a $30 trillion transfer of wealth from baby boomers to millennials and Gen X in the next 10 to 40 years. So we are about to inherit a lot of money, and I'm glad that you're here because we can talk about what you should do with it, how to move forward, and things to consider. I should also point out, Maggie mentioned this in the beginning. If you do have questions in the chat throughout, please pop them in, and if I see them, we'll address them. If not, Maggie will go through them at the end. Okay. So we're about to come into a lot of money, but we don't necessarily have the best experience with our money. So, we've experienced two, arguably three financial downturns. We had the downturn of 2000, 2009. I would say three if you want to consider what happened in 2020 with COVID, although the market has rebounded. I like to say that we are financially fragile. We are a little hesitant because we have seen our parents go through some rough waters. We also have high amounts of debt. We are the most educated generation. We are also the most indebted generation. And, college has gotten expensive and prices are only increasing for our children. And many of us are in careers where paying down debt is not an easy path. And because of all this, some researchers say that we are very financially conservative because we are holding onto cash very frequently. We are afraid to do anything with our money because we're afraid to lose it because we've got all this debt and we got to pay that off. And we are afraid to go through what our parents went through in 2000 and 2009. This also might be why a lot of millennials are, standing back from buying a home or making a large purchase like that, just because of what that could do to them financially.
I also think that when you invest, you at least should be thinking long term, and the profits you receive from investing are things that you incur in the long term as opposed to the short term. And millennials are all about the here and now, not the future, not long term. A year from now, in many cases, is long term for them. And investing, you have to look at 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So I think that also plays into it.
So all of this is sort of setting the stage of who we are, but let's talk about the challenges that we face when it comes to our money. So there's sort of 5 challenges that I think we have. So the first one is we're encumbered with debt. I touched on this already. Over 50% of millennials do not think they will ever be able to pay down their student debt or pay off their student debt. That's astronomical. Because of, partially maybe what my dad said, with us not really thinking so far ahead, or just the fact that we have so much debt, we're not planning for retirement. Only 36% of millennials have started saving for retirement. And even more concerning is we're not prepared for emergencies. So 37% of millennials were unable to come up with $2,000 in 30 days if there was an emergency. I think that this point probably was felt the most during COVID. If you were someone who lost your job in the early days of COVID, or it was unsafe for you to go to work, coming up with $2,000, if you didn't have that emergency fund, that would have been a bit scary for you. Number 4, we're hesitant to invest. Millennials hold 70% of their investments in cash. We'll talk about this more. And I saw a comment in the chat. Someone says they've got their money just sitting in a savings account because they don't know what to do with it. We'll talk about that. And actually, keeping money in cash is a guaranteed way to lose money. So we'll talk more about that. And I think number 5 is that the game has changed for us versus our parents and certainly our grandparents. Everyone before us sort of relied heavily on pension plans and Social Security and said, I've paid into the system, it will pay me back, and I will have enough to retire. And this will not be the case for the majority of millennials. Pension plans are a thing of the past. They're very infrequent if they do exist. Social Security, there's concerns to it. And for most, it is enough to live off of. So for most, saving for retirement and planning ahead really is on you as an individual.
I was going to point out that I remember when in the early 80s, your mom and we went to California. I went for a job after I finished my program at NYU. And so here we were a typical Midwestern family, and we were newly married, and we had Midwest roots, Midwest values, and we go out to California. And in California, things were a little different. Whatever you made, you spent. The idea of savings, that was a foreign concept. And it was you were what you drove or the clothes that you wore, and a lot of millennials, I think, have adopted that sort of attitude. A lot of baby boomers as well. But millennials, it's like, again, back to the here and now, and it's they're trying to keep up an image, a lifestyle, and again, investing is the opposite of that. It's
absolutely. I think that gets that comment about the FOMO culture piece. We don't want to miss out, right? And for many, it can be hard to think about planning ahead when you want to enjoy the here and the now, and the future is uncertain. So there is that push and pull. I also just wanted to quickly touch on, I saw a question came in. I said holding investments in cash, and someone asked, what does this mean? Is that the same as keeping your money in a bank account? In my mind, but it's the same thing. So if you're keeping your money in cash, it can be in a bank account, it can be under the mattress. But if you are keeping a significant amount of money in cash, that is concerning. And we'll talk a bit more about why. So what do we do about it? Here we go. So here are some tips and suggestions I like to give millennials when thinking through how to start saving and looking ahead. The first one is to automate your payments. Make your life easy. Make savings a priority along with paying your rent and paying other bills. When you get your paycheck to come in, you can usually set this up with your employer where a certain percentage or certain amount of your paycheck would go into your checking account and other money can go into a savings account or an investment account. I like to say, pay yourself first. So if your paycheck is, $2,000, you need $1,500 to live, make bills, whatever it is, pay yourself the $1,500 and then have the $500 go towards other goals and objectives you may have. I think it's an easy way to help you meet your goals without it feeling like you're making a sacrifice so much, if that's just what comes in automatically. Something that I like to do. Let's talk about debt. I didn't see any comments about debt, but it's always helpful, I think, to touch on this. Make a plan to pay off your debt if you don't already have one. And I like to talk about a plan known as the avalanche method. This is slightly different than what you may hear like Dave Ramsey and others talk about. The avalanche method says you're going to pay off the high interest debt first. So here's my example on the right. You've got 3 different types of debt. You've got credit card debt, personal loan, and student debt. The debt with the highest interest rate is the credit card debt. In this example, it's paying 20%, right? So it's the most expensive debt to hold, despite it not having the largest balance. The balance is $20,000 versus the student loan debt, which is $40,000. So my recommendation would be to first pay off the credit card debt because it has the highest interest rate. Dave Ramsey, some others may say, no, you should pay off the smallest debt first, which in this case would be the personal loan of $9,000 at 17% interest, because he thinks you need those like wins to pat yourself on the back and say, okay, I paid off $9,000 in debt. Now I'm going to work towards the $20,000 balance. In my opinion, I think it saves you money though to use the avalanche method. Pay off the most expensive debt first, the debt with the 20% interest rate, and then work your way down the list.
And that makes a lot of sense for another reason, and that is taxes. So if you look at it, that when interest is deductible, the government is subsidizing it. So if you're paying $10,000 over the course of the year of interest and it's deductible, and you are in a 24% tax bracket, basically the government is contributing $2,400 of that $10,000. Or another way of saying it, if you're in a 24% tax bracket and paying $10,000 of deductible interest, you're reducing your tax liability by $2,400. Okay. If student debt is generally not deductible, there's a limited exception. It depends on your income. But what it means is that the cost is much higher because you can't deduct it. So to me, in your example, Stephanie, you're paying 20% on a credit card bill, not deductible. If you are to pay off that $20,000, you have to make over $30,000 in order to pay the 20. Okay, that's a huge burden for people. So what we encourage them to do is always, 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 I guess there's always an exception, to pay off that debt with the highest interest rate, because of the actual cost is so high to you.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for bringing that up, Dad. So let's talk about cash. So I said that millennials hold 70% of their investments in cash, and holding cash is a sure way to lose. Let's talk about that. So purchasing power. The best example I always share is when I was growing up, the cost of a movie ticket was $6.25 at the United Artists in Commerce. $6.25 got me in the door. Haven't been to a movie in a while, but I'm pretty sure the price of a ticket is like $13, $14, maybe even more if it's one of those theaters with a reclining seat and so forth. So I need more money to get that same product, a ticket to the movies, right? So my money is not worth as much. I need more of it to buy the same thing. So here's an example. If you had $100,000, essentially, on December 31st, 2001. So, 20 years ago, you had $100,000. What would that buy you today? In 2020. So, inflation has made this even worse, actually. But as of 2020, that $100,000 is only worth $68,000.
And what's really, I'm sorry, Steph, finish. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so your money, you need more money to buy that same basket of goods that maybe you were buying for $100,000 in 2001. So holding money in cash, keeping it in a savings account, not investing it, is definitely a dangerous thing to do, because if you're saving that money to last you into retirement, the future, buying a house, whatever it is, your money will not keep up with inflation. Cash is a sure way to lose.
And my point is, during this last 20 years, we've had very low inflation. If we have the inflation that we have now for the next 20 years, then the results would be even much, much, much worse. So, okay. So because during this 20-year period, inflation averaged around 2%. And right now we're over 7, we're about 7%. So
inching towards 8 is what I was last reading.
Yeah.
And a question came in, what interest rate would the bank need to actually keep up with inflation? So I actually have a slide on that. So, Dad, why don't you talk to this? I know you like this slide.
Okay, so what this is looking at is how, if you had money sitting in a bank, what kind of interest you would have received over the last, 27 years. And what it shows you is that, like in 1994, some of you were alive at that. Well, most of you were probably alive. That if you had $100,000 in a savings account, you received approximately $3,800 of interest just by leaving that money in the savings account. And where the blue line is indicates that what you needed just to keep pace with inflation. So you see throughout the 90s, money in the savings account beat inflation. Then we come to what happens is after 9/11, 2000, 2, 3, and 4, it reversed. Wasn't terrible. But look what's happened since 2009. Through 2021, there's not been one case where interest in a bank has kept pace with inflation. It means you're losing money in real terms. We're not even talking taxes that you have to pay on the interest. And other than in 2010, the gap has been very significant. I'm not sure when this chart was dated, but I'm pretty sure it was, I think it was December 31st of last year. So the current interest rate on $100,000 would have given you a whopping $70. Okay, and just to keep pace with inflation, you would have needed to have made approximately $4,000. Means every year you're going in the hole, every single year. And what's even more distressing, even though you may have heard that the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates, and that in normal times that would mean the banks would have to pay higher interest rates, the banks are under no pressure to raise interest rates, so it's unlikely that the savings rate, that the interest rate that banks are going to pay is going to go up anything other than marginally. So here's an example, again, over the last 12 years, you've lost money, significant amounts of money every single year by keeping large portions of your investments in cash. Now that said, and Stephanie, I think we'll talk about it, everyone should have a cash reserve to cover them in the event of an emergency. So we're not talking about cash reserves, we're talking about money over and above cash reserves.
Correct. So we can just touch on that now because it came up. When we say cash reserves, we like to typically tell people you should have anywhere from 3 to 6 months of living expenses in cash. So it costs you $5,000, you and your family, $5,000 to live each month. You should have anywhere between $15,000 and $30,000 in cash in a savings account available to you so that if something came up, you would have that money easily accessible, ready to go. And there wouldn't be a risk, of market, downturns. The money is available to you. So outside of that emergency fund, you really need to keep your money, you need to have your money invested. And so we'll talk about how to invest your money. So we talked about this. Basically, the time to start investing is now. It's always the right time. Some people try and time the market and say, I want to buy when the market is at the bottom. I want to sell at the top. It's impossible to time the market because no one really knows what will happen. Warren Buffett famously said, it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. So it's about the number of days that you actually have your money invested. Now it happens to be a great time because the market is on sale. That doesn't mean that you should wait for the lowest, the lowest of the lows, and sell at the highest of the highs. Start today if you aren't already invested. And there are opportunity costs to waiting. So waiting, you miss out on potential opportunities, right?
So I just saw this because I just wrote something about this. So if you look at it, there's a tendency, not just millennials, of everyone, to look at it at the here and now. And when the market goes down, people start panicking that they're going to lose all their money and they can't afford to lose money. And what we try to encourage people to do is look at it from 10,000 feet. So even though we've seen a drop of over 10% in the market since the beginning of the year, if you take back over 12 months, market is still positive. If you go back 2 years, the market is positive. And if you go back looking at over 3 years, which incorporates a period where the S&P 500 had its fastest drop ever. That was from February to March 2020 because of COVID. But if you look back over just 3 years, this is through the close of yesterday, I believe, the market was up 50%. That's remarkable, and that takes into account a couple of significant events which caused the market to go down.
Sure.
So it's really important to take a long-term perspective and looking at things from, like I say, 10,000 feet as opposed to ground level.
I agree. So I'm actually going to jump I'm going to jump here and maybe I'll go back a second, but we like to tell people you need to build a diversified portfolio. Now, what does that mean? That means that you have your money invested in a variety of things. That means that you're diversifying asset classes. So that means stocks, bonds, alternatives, and within there even further. So they'll have exposure, they like to say, or you'll have your money in small companies, large companies. You'll have diversification based on industries, so energy, finances, technology, etc. And globally. So if you had all of your money in Europe right now, you may be having a different performance than if you had your money all in the United States, right? Things are happening differently across the globe, and we do have a global economy, right? With everything happening in Russia and Ukraine, that is impacting U.S. companies, impacting a lot of things here locally. So there is that trickle down. So we have a global economy. Your portfolio should have global exposure, and not just U.S. and Europe and in large, countries that are very developed. You need access to also emerging markets as well. And I like to tell people, investing isn't always sexy. It's much cooler to say that you've got your money in Bitcoin or you've got all your money in Apple or Amazon, but that is an incredibly risky thing to do, because any volatility or anything that shakes one company or one industry or one asset class a lot could put your portfolio and your financial goals and objectives at risk. So we would never want to suggest that. Dan, anything else you want to mention about building a diversified portfolio?
Well, yeah. So I was just going to pull up the numbers for the company and just So look, the market is such that, as Stephanie said, it's very diverse. In the Midwest, in Detroit, we used to be the engine that ran everything, no pun intended, was the auto company. But throughout, you have all different sectors: finance, real estate, tech, energy, all these things. And what happens is not everything goes up at the same time. And what's happened over the last several years is anything that touched tech has had a huge run up. Well, what's happened lately is tech has taken a huge beating, and for a variety of reasons. It's not important right now as to why, but generally what happens is other sectors either don't do as bad or do well. So energy, for instance, has done very well even during all this recent market turmoil.
Yep.
So the idea of building a diversified portfolio is spreading out the risk and not trying to pick winners and losers. So if everyone's on this call is a millennial, I remember speaking with your parents many times, go back 20 years, 25 years ago, and they would come in and they would have a portfolio and they thought they were diversified because they would own General Motors and Ford, two different companies. Well, but they invest they're in the same business. And so whatever would affect one would affect the other. Simple as that. That's not diversification. Diversification is saying, well, I got a little bit in you want to say automotive, then I got some in real estate, I got some in I got some in banking, I got some in infrastructure, I got some, in consumer discretionary, et cetera, et cetera. And by doing that, you're spreading out your risk.
Yep.
And that's why, and you do that with either individual stocks or mutual funds, but it's really, really important. What most people do when they're creating their own portfolio, they look at what did well last year.
Yes, I actually have that, and you probably know exactly what slide.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll quickly explain this. What my dad was about to say is people think, okay, what did well last year? That's what I'm going to do this year, right? So, energy is doing well now. Next year, I'm going to put my money in energy, right? You chase after the winner. And this is a great chart. This shows, 2011 to 2020. So this is one segment of 10 years. And on the left-hand side, if you look up and down, these are different asset classes. So you have bonds, you got growth, you got core, you got all these different ones. You got cash, you got international, small cap, and whatnot. So in 2011, the highest performing sector or asset class was bonds, right? The lowest performing was international, lost 12.1%. If you look at 2011, you look at those asset classes again, and you see who performed the best and who performed the worst. International, boom, all of a sudden international did great, 17.3% return. The next year, international was at 22.8%, which was great, a great return, but small cap actually did even better. Small cap was at 38.8%, right? So if you look across and you can kind of track the colors with your eyes, there really isn't a pattern here, right? You've got, bonds doing well some years, you've got cash doing, usually around 0.1%, but some years at 2019, cash was at 2.3%, right? So it's wild. There's no pattern. So trying to pick which asset class will be the winner next year is impossible. It's right. Impossible.
And what happens is, it's not only is it impossible, but in many cases, it's totally outside of your control as to the events that trigger it. So go back 2 years ago. Just two quick companies. So 2 years ago today, almost, I doubt there was anyone who ever heard of a company called Zoom. Okay? And obviously during COVID, Zoom stock, everyone started using Zoom. And so, here it is, just out of something that no one could foresee, COVID, no one having an idea what was going to happen, it benefited. The same thing happened with Peloton. Peloton stock just took off like crazy in 2020 because of, all the health clubs were closed. People want to work out. They started adding on employees. Their sales went up. Their stock hit records. Okay, and they started planning accordingly based on the fact that they thought this was going to be the new normal. And then what happened was they overcommitted, they overspent, whatever it is. And just recently, the founder and the CEO had to resign. I think the stock has dropped like 70%. They had to lay off 2,500 people. Things happen. And they, very quickly.
And there was a comment I just saw, that sure, a diversified portfolio does not guarantee performance, right? There are plenty of diversified portfolios that lose money. However, it protects you both on the up and the downside, right? So if you had all of your money in Peloton, you would have just lost a lot of money. Or if you had all of your money in US-based fitness companies, you would have seen some ups and downs. And I think overall things are down right now. However, if you had access to other investments, you've got some cushion. So the lows aren't going to be as low. And similarly, the highs may not be as high. So I wanted to return back to this slide. This shows you, another 20-year return from 1999 to 2019 of different asset class returns. So as you can see, REITs, that's real estate investments. Over 20 years, they performed 11.6%. At the very end, you see commodities, things like wheat, gasoline, those sort of items performed at the lowest 1%. The average investor is performing at 2.5% a year. Why? Why is the average investor performing at 2.5%? Well, the average investor likes to buy high and sell low. So what does that mean? The average investor sees that right now, I'm not sure if anything is really hot right now, but I'll use the Peloton example. Peloton was really hot during the pandemic. So the average investor sees that, they buy Peloton. Right now, Peloton is hurting, and the average investor gets scared and they sell when it's down. So they don't make money because they're thinking emotionally. They don't have a strategic plan in place, and they don't have a diversified portfolio, right? They're just picking things here and there and saying, oh, Peloton's pretty cool. I like Peloton. I drive a Ford car. I'm going to buy some Ford. Everyone's talking about Tesla. I'll buy some of that too. And they're not building a strategic plan. Now, to the point, the question in the comments, sure, the average portfolio may not perform as well as REITs did, real estate, in this 20-year term. So if you see those two blue bars, the light blue one says 60-40. That's a portfolio that is 60% in US equities, 60% equities, so 60% in stock and 40% in bonds, right? And this is global exposure. So it's a diversified portfolio. The dark blue is 40% in equity and 60% in bonds. As you can see here, they aren't performing, these two diversified portfolios are not outperforming the REITs or, equity, even the S&P 500. However, it's sort of a middle of the road, slow and steady pace. You're not going to be the worst performer. You're not going to be the best performer, but it's a safer, more secure route to planning your future and your retirement.
So to that point, Stephanie, and we're just talking about Peloton. So Peloton went public on September 25th. I'm sorry, September 25th, 2019 at $25 a share. That's what it closed at. On December 23rd, 2020, stock was at $167.72. Today, it closed at $22.50. So for the last 1 year, it's down 79%. Now, I can't tell you whether Peloton's a good play, a bad play, or anything like that. Okay, I just know that if here it is in 2020, the stock is going up, and a lot of people are going in and buying it because it's going up and going up and going up. And, without an idea, without diversifying, without a plan, now they get really hurt. They get real hurt. And sometimes what you have to do is to be patient and think it through. And that's why, buying individual stocks now what we do, because we think that there's a lot more risk involved with buying individual stocks than buying a fund. But it's really important to have a long-term outlook and be diversified and have realistic goals.
Perfect. So we talked a little bit about risk. Understand your risk tolerance. That means if you are uncomfortable with lots of swings in your bank account, if you started with $100,000 and it drops down to $60,000 for whatever reason, and that's going to make you not sleep well at night, make you a bit anxious, then you wouldn't want to have your money invested in riskier investments. So riskier is based on the type of investment. So that doesn't mean that mutual funds are risky or not risky. There are mutual funds that are more risky than others. It's based upon the type of companies that they're investing in, right? If you're investing in a cryptocurrency business, that is a riskier investment than if you were investing somewhere else, because cryptocurrency doesn't have a long track record. It is inherently more volatile. It's not regulated in the same way. So there's different ways to think about risk. Understand what makes you comfortable and never do anything outside of your comfort zone. So, yes, go ahead, Deb.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so, there have been lots of ups and downs in the market. This chart shows the performance of the S&P 500, so the 500 largest U.S. companies, as of October 9th, 2007. So this was the high before the drop in 2008 and 2009. This was the top of the market. And as you can see from that blue line, the index, the 500 companies it's moved quite a bit. There have been some, bumps along the way, especially if you look at, 2020, that was quite a drop. But the correct trajectory is clear. It is going up, right? It started, this is as of March 11th, so I think that was Friday. It is going to the top right corner, despite a lot of volatility in the day-to-day. So each of these lines with the red dots shows a drawdown or a drop in the market of 5% or more after a record close, right? So you can see all of these drops, and the one on the far right is actually what's happening right now, right? This negative 12.35% correction is what you would call it. So this happens. The market does have drawdowns. There are going to be times when things are not looking as positive, but look, I mean, this is pretty clear, right? Things are moving in the right direction.
Right. So the point of this chart is that since 2007, there have been, the market has gone up 300%. 300%, just about. That doesn't include dividends. Since October 2007, that's when the market started to fall. And during that time, as the chart before shows, there have been a minimum of 20 times where the market has dropped at least 5% or more since a record close. So where it said, you see the minus 33.92, that's when COVID came about. There are other incidents, I don't remember what one. You had Brexit vote, that caused a big crash. You had U.S. Going to possibly default on its debt, the debt ceiling, that caused a trigger. Trade tensions with China, that caused a problem. There are all these things that happen on a fairly regular basis. And when they don't happen, that's what's uncommon. So in 2021, we didn't really have any big market drops. That was uncommon. It's more common when you have large drops.
Yep. So we like to tell people, investing is like gardening. You can't create this diversified portfolio once and then set it and forget it. It requires pruning and upkeep. We would suggest that you rebalance your portfolio every quarter. What that means is you're looking at what happened that last quarter. And if you were comfortable with 70%, let's say, of your portfolio being in equities, and since recently equities haven't done so well, maybe equities only represent 60% of your portfolio. So what does that mean you would do? You would be selling bonds. You'd be selling the things that performed well and buying equities because they're cheap. They're on sale, right? You're going to buy more of what hasn't done well and sell things that have done well, which is sometimes hard for people to wrap their head around. Why would I sell the winners and buy losers, right? But that's how the pruning and the upkeep works, right? You buy things when they're cheap and on sale, not when they're
right. So as you've heard me
up.
say, investing's the only business when things get on sale, people leave the store. So when people sell when the market is down, and when do they buy? When things are high.
Yep.
Okay. And everyone has as a goal, investment goal, buy low and sell high. The problem is no one wants to buy low. They just want to buy high. So rebalancing is a guaranteed way where you can guarantee yourself of buying low and selling high, as long as you do it on a disciplined manner, not trying to guess what's going to happen. So in Stephanie's analogy, if you look at your anyone's portfolio, and Stephanie used an allocation of 70-30, meaning 70% equities, 30% bonds. If you had that on January 1st, okay, right now you're nowhere near 70-30. You may be 60-40 because the equities have gone down significantly. So what does that mean? That means if you're doing regular rebalancing, you would be selling your bonds and buying equities. Okay, you're buying equities cheaper, and international is even cheaper than US. And again, you do this on a regular, consistent basis with a plan, you will guarantee yourself of always buying low and selling high, and making sure your portfolio on a risk level is always appropriate for you.
Yeah. So it takes work. You can't just do it once. It's a lifelong thing that you have to do in order to ensure that your investments reflect the goals that you're working towards. A question came up in the chat. When would you suggest that someone doesn't invest their money and keeps their money in cash? I mean, and if you had a reason, my dad likes to give the example, when I got married, my dad was generous and helped pay for all of the celebrations. What does that mean? He had an expected expense coming up. He shares the story, so I don't mean to tell your story for you, but he set that money aside in cash, and that money was not invested. But really, you're never too late to start investing. We like to share a story. We had a client in his 90s who was saying he wanted to move all of his money to be very aggressively invested because he was investing for his grandchildren, and he wanted to make sure that they were set up properly. So there really is no time to not be an investor if you've got goals and future ambitions and things you want to do with your money.
Very well said.
Okay, I'm going to click through these pretty quickly because we've got about 9 minutes left. But if you are just getting started, some quick tips of things you should do. Max out your 401k. This is a great way to start saving for your future, and especially if there's an employer match, that's like free money. If you've got extra money, contributing to a traditional IRA or Roth IRA is a great way to put extra money aside. And there are tax benefits depending on your income level. And if you don't have an estate plan, and especially if you have got children, you got to get one put together, contact an attorney as soon as possible. We have attorneys in our office do this, but it is incredibly important that you designate who will get your children in the event that the worst thing happens. So
Steph, I just want to point out on the 401k, for most people, there's a significant tax advantage. Whatever money that goes into the 401k, you're not paying tax on. So if you decide to allocate $10,000 to the 401k, you're not paying tax on that. And the earnings on that are not taxed. And you only pay tax when you withdraw the money. So it's a powerful incentive to contribute because you get a double tax benefit. You're not paying tax on your earnings, and the contributions are in essence tax deductible. And for most people, the tax deduction, they're in a higher tax bracket while they're working than when they retire. So when you withdraw the money, you're paying tax at a lower rate, and you get a higher tax deduction in effect while you're working. So for most people, it is a substantial advantage to contribute to the 401k, despite, in addition to the things you have mentioned.
Great. Purchasing your first home. So just a quick note. Think about what you can afford, and what you can afford is not the same as just thinking about, I pay $2,000 in rent today. I can afford a $2,000 mortgage. I'm a new homeowner myself. We bought a house a couple years ago. There are expenses beyond the mortgage payment. You've got insurance, you've got taxes, you've got maintenance, and you've got the unexpected. My example is I bought a house, had a great inspection, all was well. And then we had to rebuild the sewage line twice because the first time a contractor didn't do the work he said he would do. So those things are going to happen. You've got to be prepared for them. And then shop around for interest rates. There's lots of fees and a lot of it is negotiable. So don't be afraid to say what's the best you can do, because I am looking elsewhere. Saving for college. We recently posted a blog on our website about this. There's 529 plans, there's also MET plans. MET plans are prepaid tuition plans. So you would essentially buy tuition today for your child to use in the future at the cost that it is today, given, tuition inflation is a real problem and the cost of education is increasing. There's benefits to both. And the 529 plan is what actually we have for my children. 529 plan gives you a lot of flexibility. It can actually be used for secondary school. It can be used for vocational programs. A lot of options. And, it's very easy to set up with very little money. So if you go to misaves.gov and you're in the state of Michigan, there's benefits for you to also put that money aside there. And if you're interested in the MET plan, like I mentioned, we've got a blog that was, I think it was just written last week, it was put up there about MET plans. So take action is what I hope everyone leaves this conversation with today. That means get organized, get all your financial statements in a row. Maybe you're already doing this because it's tax season. See what you've got going on. Define your goals. So what are you saving for? And I say that not asking you, I'm saving to have $1 million. What are the real tangible things that you want to do? And think about what those things will cost you. Get invested. Do not sit on lots of cash. Get busy and get your money in the market. Educate yourself. You're already here, so you're already on the right track. And assemble a team of experts, because you cannot do this on your own. I work in this space, so I can help with financial advisors and financial advice, but I am not a doctor. So I wouldn't expect myself to have the expertise of a medical professional and take care of my own medical needs. I go and I see an expert. And so, reach out for help and get a team around you to support you. That means that potentially hiring an attorney to help you with your estate planning needs, an accountant, and a financial professional. If you feel like there's a lot of information out there, I can't do it myself. One note on financial professionals is when you talk to people, make sure you're talking to a fiduciary. So we happen to be fiduciaries at Bloom Advisors, but make sure if you choose to work with someone, they are a fiduciary. What that means is, it means that their interests are only your best interests. So they are not going to put your investments in places that benefit themselves over benefiting you. So, you don't want someone to put your money into a investment because if they do so many investments, they get a trip to Hawaii at the end, or there's commissions back to them if they put your money in a certain place. A lot of times, that is the case. Annuities are known for having high commissions, and you want to steer clear of that. You want someone to pick investments based on what you need. So again, look for a fiduciary. If you want to learn more about us, you want to, read, we've got a lot of great information on our blogs and websites, on our website. So you just go to the top of our page, you hit news and insights, and there's a lot of great information there. So all that to be said, we've got a couple minutes for questions. I'm happy to stay on longer. Maggie, I'm sorry that we went so close to 7:30.
Not a problem. I have one question here. It says, having a team of experts seems expensive. It almost feels like a luxury? How expensive is doing that in reality?
I think it all depends. And I think it's important to understand what fees you're going to pay. I think it's important to work with a team that's very transparent. A lot of financial advisors these days are charging a fixed percentage of the money that they manage for you. So let's say, you give them $150,000 and they want to charge you 1% of $150,000. That would be $1,500 over the course of the year. I've seen fees range from, 1% or lower up to 2 or 3%. It all depends. I'd want to understand what is included in your fee, in the fees of whoever is working for you. Are they going to charge you for phone calls or other meetings? Like, attorneys often bill for their time. But I think that you also have to think, Adam asked this question, you have to think, what's the cost of not hiring help sometimes, right? So if I don't see a doctor, am I at risk of getting sicker or creating a more serious problem than I can handle? Dad, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, there are a lot of great resources online, but just because it's online doesn't make it a great resource. So my dad who was pretty smart, and my dad by training was a CPA. He would always tell me, well, I read something on the internet. Okay. And I always say, well, who posted it? Where did it come from? Well, I don't know, and he would try to use that, telling me that something must be true or be good advice because he saw it on the internet. So, you got to be careful. There is a lot of great information on the internet if you're willing to spend the time. Some of it, there's no substitute. I mean, tax returns. By training, I happen to be a tax lawyer. Okay. And I would advise anyone who wanted to do their own tax return, you have to get a program, whether it's TurboTax or Tax Cut or something like that. Don't do it by hand. And every now and then I get someone who's doing a tax return by hand. Why? Because they want to save the money. Well, they're guaranteeing themselves of making a mistake. And that's just not a good use of money. So, it's hard to answer and say how much you're going to have to pay for the advice because everyone's situation is different. I think that we have to look at is to saying, to Stephanie's point, what are the consequences of getting bad advice also? And what is the character of the advice? And everything should be upfront and transparent.
There are, if you are looking to do things on your own, I know Fidelity and Charles Schwab, I think Vanguard as well, have very low fee, low minimum investments that you can get started with. There are target date funds, or just like generic portfolios that you could put your money into. So that would mean, there is like a set it and forget it option type thing. You could say, I want a 60-40 portfolio and click it and walk away. The problem with that is, for target date funds, is over time, they make your investments less risky, meaning they're reducing the number of stocks that you have and increasing number of bonds that you have, which may make sense for some people, but for, I would say, the majority, it doesn't, because you still need a rising income in retirement. You can't just live off of your money and pull it out. You need your portfolio to generate incomes so that it can keep up with inflation, so that you can, your wealth can grow. So there are options, but it's not for everyone. But it's a good place to get started.
Yeah, and the other issue I was going to say is there are what are called robo-advisors.
Yes.
And robo-advisors are basically people who will manage your money using computer models. Okay? And they're very inexpensive. And in many cases, that's a really good option for people. The big disadvantage is there's no one to talk to one-to-one. It's basically dealing with a computer. But for many people, if they're looking to get started, it's not a bad way of going.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, Stephanie, it looks like the last question. On a related note, my grandmother attended her garden every day. Once invested, how often would you recommend the average person to tend their financial garden? And how often, how much effort?
So I think there's different things that you need to do when you tend your garden, right? So at the beginning of the season, you're putting down new mulch, you're, getting your new seeds, probably daily your grandma was pulling weeds, she's watering it every day. As the seasons change, there's a different to-do list, right? Of, raking leaves and whatnot. And I think the same is true for your portfolio. So seasonally or every quarter, you should probably review your portfolio and your investments and rebalance, right? So that's buying high, low and selling high, and making sure your portfolio matches your risk tolerance. In the beginning of the season, if you pick January, whatever it is, you probably want to look at all your investments again and say, how are these performing? Checking in on them. How have they done for me over the last year, maybe over the last 3 years? You're looking back, looking ahead. Does it still meet the criteria of my investments, right? Sometimes people who have who manage a mutual fund, sometimes there are management changes, right? And there's new people doing it. And so sometimes that's a reason that you may want to change it, because that manager has a different strategy. Or, my dad mentioned Peloton, right? If you held Peloton in your portfolio and you just saw that they fired the CEO, maybe you no longer want to hold that investment because, you had a special affinity to that CEO. So it ranges the things that you need to do quarterly and annually. Daily, there's not much that you need to do. I wouldn't tell you that daily you should be obsessively checking your balances and whatnot. But I think it will range, and it does require effort. It does require, research and reading. And I think that's the whole reason that people sometimes, outsource it.
So I think at a minimum, people should look at their portfolios at least twice a year. There's such studies that said, well, you can even do it as once a year, but a lot of things happen. The problem is that a lot of times it gets very complicated. True story, many years ago, I was rebalancing, working on my own portfolio. I was spending a lot of time, and my wife said to me, why don't I just hire someone to do it? Because it was taking me a lot of time. And I said, well, that's my business. So the other issue is with people is when they look at their portfolios, they make decisions based on emotion, not reason. And that's the worst thing that you can do. So what you really want to do is take a step back. Once you get your allocation and once you have your quote plan, don't worry about it. Maybe 6 months later, if you're doing it on your own, or if you hire a professional, the professionals do it more often. They do it more often. But don't look at it every single day, because it'll drive you crazy and it'll lead you to make bad decisions, because those decisions will be based on emotion, not based on reason and logic. So
I agree.
All right. Are there any other questions for Stephanie or Ken?
We want to thank you for hosting us. It was our pleasure. We always enjoy doing this. Hopefully I didn't embarrass Stephanie too much. I must have failed in my job if I didn't embarrass her. But I want to wish everyone continue to be safe, even though COVID's still out there. We got a lot of other issues, and looking forward to a day where COVID is a distant memory.
Yeah, we all do. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Okay.